Welcome to this video about preparing your server to install FastPass Password Manager. This video will only focus on the preparations of the server for a single base installation. So it will cover the following topics: creating the users and groups necessary for operating and running the services. It will install IIS, ADLS, which is the LDAP database of FastPass. We'll create a domain-signed SSL certificate and bind it to HTTPS. And then we'll create an ADLS instance for FastPass and then install and configure SQL Server so we are ready to do the actual FastPass installation afterwards. First up is to create an end user that will be able to administer FastPass. So that's an administrative user, and this user will have access to go into the FastPass administration console. The user needs to be a member of a group, and the group will note to FastPass and will note to FastPass that this group in Active Directory will have access to go to the administration part. So this was the user. Now for the creating the actual group in Active Directory. The group, to log on to the administration part of FastPass, you also, as an end user, need local logon rights. So make a note of that. Otherwise, you will not be able to successfully log in. So this is the group. So next up is a group for the help desk users. So any service desk user going into FastPass will need to be a member of that group in order to serve the end users. Finally, we'll need a group for end users. So all of these group users that need to be able to do self-service password reset or be served from the help desk part need to be a member of that group. Of course, you can spread this up in different groups if you want to. You can also use some users you already have. Now we're back on the actual FastPass server, and this is the first service account, the FP Adam user. This user is needed to access the Adam database. Next up is the FP gateway user. This gateway user is just used internally in FastPass for communication between the components and the gateway. This user also needs to be a member of a group because we actually give the rights to access it to the group. So the group is noted here, and the FP Gateway user needs to be a member of the FP Gateway group. And these are local accounts, and they could as well be domain accounts. No bigger difference there. There are some smaller rights you need to give to the end users if you're using domain users, but that's also covered in our documentation. Next, we'll install the roles. First up is the Active Directory lightweight directory services. And of course, the website is needed. And under the website, we need .NET as feature, but on the role side, we also need to allow for ASP.NET 4.7. And that's what we're selecting here. Finally, we'll need to allow IIS management metabase compatibility. And that's it. Let the roles install. That's done. So next up is the IIS server. We'll create a domain sign certificate. In the IIS manager, just create domain sign certificate here. So you could as well use a self-signed certificate for your test of FastPass, but there you'll then need to make sure that you export the self-signed certificate to your clients. Otherwise, they will not trust the server. Using a domain sign is much better, as the client will have a default trust in that. So this completes the creation of the domain certificate. And that is simply done here in the fully qualified domain name of the server. Usually in an actual FastPass installation, you would do fastpass.domain.com or something like that. So for the bindings, we'll add it here, HTTPS, and then select the certificate, and it will listen to all the different SSL, all the different IPs. Perfect. Next up is creating an ADLS instance, and this is how you do it. The name you give here will be an actual Windows service. Then put in 50,000 and 50,001 for the default port numbers. And next up, you'll need to create an application directory name, and that is by default O equals password manager in camel casing like that. Please stick to that. Next up is the user that can actually access the ADLS instance, and that would be our FP Adam user that we created earlier. After this, pressing next here will prompt the username and password for the FP Adam user, and then you're done creating the ADLS instance. So that's like an empty database has been created. Finally, we'll need to install SQL Server. Here we use SQL Server 2019. It could be older, that's fine. It can be newer, that's also fine. When installing SQL Server, it's important that we install it in mixed mode. Then you'll find that everything will be working for you without any hassle. You can also do it as in non-mixed mode, but that will give you some issues. You'll need to create some user accounts in SQL Server and give rights by yourself. That's definitely doable and described, but by default, doing it like this is the easiest way to get up and running. And here we come to the part where we need to select the mixed mode and give a password for the SA account. And it's important to note that password, as that will be used many times later in the installation where we are installing synchronization, and also when we install the actual FastPass basics bins. That's it. The installation has been done. Finally, to configure connection to FastPass, by default, we suggest to use port 1433, which is the default port. So do this to enable TCP/IP and also to set the actual port for listening on all IPs. You can also use it as a named instance. Then you, of course, you'll need the browser engine running as well. But doing 1433, that will just work for you at all times, even if somebody shuts down the SQL Server browser. That's it for this video. Next video will be about actually installing the system. So keep an eye on it. Thank you.